All right, we are live. Welcome back. It's been a minute, as they say in the vernacular of the streets. L'chaim of the bracha. Hope everyone had an amazing Tishrei and beautiful Chagim. I know we did. We just got back from Beit Rabbeinu Shebavel, 770, Beit Chainu, the center of Lubavitch and of the energy in the world. That was quite great, dancing all night. And doing Hakafas in 770. It was beautiful. But enough about that. Let's dig in because it's been a while, and we have started a new sequence of the Nun Aleph Nun Beis sequence. I shouldn't say new sequence because they officially start after Pesach and Vayikra. But we have started the beginning of Nun Beis, which is the most recent year of the Sichos, 1992, and the beginning of this year starting at Bereshis. So since we were not together on last Monday night, I just want to spend a few minutes to recap last week's Parsha and the Sicha of last week's Parsha in Bereshis, because it's a lead-in to this week's Parsha of Noah. So just briefly, there's different interpretations of Bereshis. The word Bereshis, of course, means beginning. And we know Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'haaretz. The pshat, if you will, is that God created the heaven and the earth. So the simple meaning is that Bereshis, the whole purpose, or the word Bereshis, which should say, is referring to God's creation of the world. That in the beginning He created the heavens and the earth. But our sages teach us that there's in fact a deeper meaning, and Bereshis means Beis Reshis, or two beginnings. And those two beginnings are hinted at something deeper. And that something deeper is that the whole purpose of the creation of heaven and earth were for two reasons. One, the Torah, and two, the Jewish people. Meaning the Torah is a map of all of creation and of mankind's, Jewish people and non-Jews as well, mission in this world. And the Jewish people are the one who are here to enforce and to spread the light of the Torah and bring it to our fellow brethren as well as to the nations of the world. And that's the ultimate purpose of creation and the inner dimension of the meaning of what Bereshis is and the inner purpose of all of creation, because there has to be a purpose. It can't be that God just created heaven and earth because He was bored or He had nothing else to do. He created it, in fact, for the purpose of spreading His knowledge and wisdom, which is in the Torah around the world, through His chosen emissaries, which are the Jewish people. And that whole culmination of that events is what we call is the days of Moshiach, or redemption, which we have already entered into, as you can see. Any of those who are in touch or in tune with the deeper reality of the world see how much closer we are to redemption. Even those who are looking at the world from a superficial lens will notice that the current turmoil in the world in every single capacity, these are all signs of the redemption. Hinted at the decaying of the current reality, just like a seed has to decay into the earth prior to new growth coming from it. That's what we're experiencing right now, the decaying of the existing systems of things, of how they appear to be. A lot of klipa, a lot of evil is falling and has fallen and will continue to do so. And the light of God will continue to shine, and it will become quite obvious, if it hasn't already, that there are two groups. There are the Jewish people and their friends who believe in God and believe in an ethical, moral world, and there are their enemies who believe in everything that is immoral and unethical and apprehensive and reprehensive and just horrific, as is starting to take place. As you notice, more and more of these inner elite circles are starting to crumble. And you could start to see some of these one-time celebrities and movie stars and rap stars and people that were idolized across the world getting a little bit of a glimpse into what their real lifestyles are about behind closed doors, which of course are all video cameraed, as we know, and will soon continue to be released to the world. But moving back on into our sichas, so the whole point of this creation is to bring God's energy and his kingship to the world through His chosen people, the Jewish people. And that's the deeper meaning of Bereshis. And in fact, the Rebbe went on to say that the idea, kind of, behind the this concept of free choice. It says when God chose who was going to be the light into the nations, who was going to be the Jewish people, he was not referring to their souls, because free choice has to be between two equal things. So he chose the Jewish body, the bodies to be Jews. In other words, he placed his godly soul in bodies he selected to be a Jewish body, because you can't compare a godly soul to a non-godly soul and say which is the choice. That's like saying you want $1,000,000 or you want 50 cents. There's not really that's not a free choice. A free choice is between two things that have similar um, appearances or qualities. Anyhow, so the Jewish bodies were chosen for the godly soul to enter into. And the purpose, of course, is for those bodies and those souls to connect and to manifest God's will in the world. The other point that Rebbe brought out in the Sikha, an important point, was regarding the land of Israel, that the land of Israel can never be compromised. Unfortunately, at that period of time, and we're having a repeat right now, 33 years later, there's pressure in Israel and outside of Israel that you have to listen to the nations of the world because they're kind to you and because they give you charity. Exactly what's happening in America right now, and the distorted, horrific hypocrisy of the governments of Israel and America, where Israel continues, unfortunately, to buckle to pressures of America, not to hit Iran too hard, not to fight back too hard. They're somehow drawing a moral equivalent between the worst criminal, horrific murderers, rapists in the world attacking innocent civilians versus the Jewish people in Israel's right to defend themselves. All these so-called civilian casualties in Gaza and in Lebanon are 100% the responsibility and liability of the people of those countries who have elected these horrific terrorist regimes who allow them to place their missiles inside nurseries, inside places of worship, inside hospitals. But unfortunately, the current makeup of the Jewish political system in Israel is buckling to the pressure. And the Rebbe in last week's Sikha clearly said this is the worst thing to do. Yes, we have to be nice to the nations of the world, but they know and respect the fact that we're the chosen people. And if in fact we know that the God chose the world for us to deliver the message of truth, we must follow halacha. Halacha is very clear that if your enemy, especially on a border city, even discusses about coming to take one drop of grain from you, you must beat them out before they even come and attack them with all of your might and destroy them from any capabilities of them doing so. So I want to move on to this week's Sikha, but if you look at the fact at how many times Israel has been claiming over the last year or a couple of years of all the missiles and launching sites that they have destroyed from Iran and Lebanon and Gaza, my question is, why now? Haven't you realized for the last 15 years they've been building tunnels that are wide enough, that are bigger than a freeway, that you could run 18-wheelers through there? Of course they knew. They knew about all their exercises. They knew about all the missiles they've been talking about for years, about people hearing tunnels underneath their homes, and they did nothing about it. So I don't want to get too tied up in this because it's a whole forbidden in and of itself, but the Rebbe's message is very clear, and it's eternal, that we must never, ever buckle to the pressures of the nations of the world just because they're nice or just because they give us money for our weapons or whatever it is. We have to realize that the Jewish people's survival, including in the land of Israel, is 100% based on God's kindness. And when we are strong and we stand up to the nations of the world and let them know that they're not even permitted to talk about us conceding one drop of land, and that we use full power, which is the only thing these people understand, they will respect and understand us. And the land of Israel is an eternal heritage to the Jewish people, and it exists forever, and it's never to be compromised. And all the problems we see in the world are a direct result of that. If the Jewish people just stood up and say, this is God's land, he gave it to us, and not only we will defend it, but any ounce of aggression against us will be met 100-fold instead of 1/10-fold of what they're doing. So that's a basic synopsis of the first week's Sikha Bereshis that we missed together. And that moves us now into Parshas Noach, and we will hop right in. Okay. Parshas Noach. The Sikha was given 33 years ago. Aleph. Shabbos Parshas Noach, Shabbos Klavis. At this Shabbos on Parshas Noach, excuse me, is a general and encompassing Shabbos. Yosei Shabbos Rishona Sheba, no Nishlamas Avodah Sheteshes Mehamas Shla'achar Shabbos Bereshis. Excuse me. What makes it so special? Because this is the actual first Shabbos that takes place after a week of work. In other words, the first week of creation was God creating the world. But the second week of creation, which is in we're now, is actually connected to our work in the world. Because remember, man was created Erev Shabbos. It was created right before Shabbat, rested, and then went to work in this week's Parsha. Noah. Okay. Kedugmas b'shem haparsha Noach melashon menucha. Noach is from the same root of menucha. Nichaya derucha, which basically refers to a concept of menucha is different than shalom. Shalom is peace. Menucha is calm. It's a state of it's a very hard word to translate into English. Of it's peace in a way, but it's in a way of menucha, like the Rebbe blesses people, menucha nefesh and menucha a goof. That it should be with a calm, I can't think of the right word in English. We'll go with a restful, a calm demeanor of your soul and your body. In other words, someone could be extremely busy and have a tremendous amount of responsibility on them and work at a very high capacity in a state of menucha, right? You'll never see the Rebbe nervous. And you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who has more on their plate than the Rebbe, who's running thousands and tens of thousands of institutions around the world. Yet he's calm. He's direct. He moves with alacrity, but he's totally calm. On the other hand, there are certain people who they work a few hours a day and they're nervous wrecks. They can't handle the pressure and the stress, and it's too much, and this is wrong, and that's wrong, and that's wrong. So it's not connected to how much you're working. It's connected to your inner state of being during your process of work. And Noach comes from the Lashon Menucha, which is this calmness, if you will. Shu b'chinas shavita kadam cheshleivas malacha. K'moskir yeshua b'yom hashvi'i. V'targumo Noach b'yom hashvi'i. Haynu sheb'shem ha'parsha mudgash kol tzinin shel yom hashvi'i. Hashavas. So we're talking about this calmness. Shabbat is a day that God injects menucha into the world, this state of calmness into the world in a way of that it's not just infused through our avoda, but into the world in general. And therefore we see that this week's Parsha Noach is connected to that. So let's explain it this way. Excuse me. Shabbos Bereshis, he Shabbos Klal. So we also said this is a general Shabbos. Shapaska Rabbi Samuel Natsiyenu has declared by our Rebbes and our leaders, Zom Yishalat Dich. I'm not going to even try to butcher that in Yiddish. Hanhaga the Shabbos Bereshis and that the way you conduct yourself on Shabbos Bereshis is a guidepost for how you act the entire year. Kivan Shemini Misbarachin Kulol Yamin. That we've just completed this full 7 days of work and actuality in the world after we were holding Shabbat Klal Gam Yemei HaShavua. L'kol Shavua Nimshach Hashana. Sh'Kol HaShavua Chazrim Rishonim Oisei Shel Yamin V'Yom Rishon Ad Yom HaShavas. Shavas Yemei HaKev HaKlal is called Hamshech HaZman. That we have 7 days of completion. That we know that in the Jewish calendar you run from the first day, which is Yom Rishon, which is Sunday, all the way up into Shabbat. And that's a full 7 days. And Shabbat being the final day of the week, in the day of rest or Menucha or Kamas. Mizem move on to Gam Shabbos Noachi Shabbos Klalis. As we said earlier, the reason this is such a special Shabbat is because it comes after 6 full days of working, right? Again, Shabbos Bereshis was 6 days of God working, of God creating the world. But now we're starting, as we started yesterday, the beginning of our work in the world. And therefore, this upcoming Shabbat is a reflection of what we did during our first full week after the God created the world. And this week influences the entire upcoming year. And therefore, it's emphasizing also in general the matter of Shabbos, and Shabbos being a day of rest and menucha, because it's the first Shabbat after a real day, a real work week. That man has then completed his first week of work. And it comes out from this that Shabbos Bereshis includes the service of all the days of the week, that it gives the power. The Shabbos Parshas Noach, Klalus Machaver Aven Abochim, the Avodah the Kol Yemei HaShavua. Confusion before. So an interesting thing, and we started a bit late because I was talking about last week's Sikha, so I don't want to go too deep into it. But the first week connected to Shabbos Bereshis is connected to the power to give us to work. And the second week of Parshas Noach is connected to the actual work. We see this exactly the same idea. It's not very accurate to say that we work 6 days and the seventh day we rest. What really happened was, first God gave us the power. We were created right for 4 Shabbats. And that power enabled us to work for a week. We see the same thing. What's the first month of the Hebrew year? Tishrei. What do we do in Tishrei? There's barely any regular work. What are we doing? It's Avodas Hashem. It's Rosh Hashanah. It's Yom Kippur. It's the 10 days of Tshuva. In between, it's Lichot. Some go do even after it. It's Simchas Torah. It's Sukkot. It's just a month packed of holidays. So what happens is that month, that first week, it's not that we had 11 months and then a month of holidays. We have a month of holidays and then 11 months of work. So it's the power that gives us this ability to do the work afterwards. Excuse me 1 second. I got a bit of a tickle. A little bit late night dancing every night till 6 in the morning in Crown Heights. I got to get a cough drop. Be right back. Okay, base. So there's a connection, of course, between this idea of this first week of work, Parshas Noach, and this parsha, which is Noach. The Parshios Bereshis and Noach. We see the matters that are similar between Parshas Bereshis and Parshas Noach. Brias v'kiyam ha'olam, the creation and the sustaining of the world. But Parshas Bereshis Musufar Oides Brias ha'olam. In Parshas Bereshis, we learn about the creation of the world. Bereshis bara Elokim as hashamayim v'sa'aretz. God created the heaven and the earth. Elu Torah shamayim v'aretz, and these are the offspring of the heaven and the earth. But Parshas Noach Musufar Oides v'techa al kiyam ha'olam. And Parshas Noach, we learn the story of how God has agreed to sustain and fulfill and continue the world to exist. And God will never destroy the world again. And God said, I have made a covenant between me and between creation, that I will no longer destroy the world. The Dora Israel as Kashti Nasati Ba'inin Chayesa Lo Isburias Beni Uben Ba'arts. Chalukim Shemeh. What's the difference between them? The Parshas Bereshis, Medubar Oidei Shleimas Oidei. In Parshas Bereshis, we learned about God's completing the creation of the world. Kefishu Metzar Brias Oidei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Veloichin Keshaoilim Yured Umedrega Kefitzer Ulis Betzad Ratzayin HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lo Yechol Yos Kiyam Oidei. That God is the one who created all the world. Mesubar Parshas Bereshis, and that's what we learn about Parshas Bereshis. God being the creator of the world. Hashem ki rava ra'az hadam ba'aretz. But Parshas Noach medura uidish shleimas ha'ilam kafi shu metzad atzmei. Shegav shemetzad yiroid neitem koach le'abiyuro zecha ha'olam u'lechein einin shal aretz yinaza kasha enyan u'riyasa le'zachor b'ris olam. Whereas Parshas Noach is showing that not so much that God has created the world, but that the continued existence and sustaining of the world will be done through Hashem. And we see that because he made a covenant between creation and himself. That through the service of refining and rectifying the world, this lower world, and this is the lowest aspect of creation, at the idea is that God wants a dwelling place in this world below. And that's why he's not going to destroy the world anymore, because he's made a covenant to continue the world in a state of existence. And that's where we come into play. But Parshas Bereshis Mugash ve'ikar ma'amor matzav ha'olam kefishu metzar ha'kavana el yain. So the general main difference is that Parshas Bereshis is connected to the general service of God above, that he gives the power to and gave the power to create the world. And Parshas Noach Mugash ve'ikar ma'amor matzav ha'olam kefishu metzar ha'vodas hadam. And Parshas Noach is connected to that power that God has given to create and sustain the world. He's given to us to be his partner. And it's connected to our work in the world. And that we are the ones who will be God's partners in creation, in sustaining the world, by running it according to his will and his wishes. That's why we have a Torah, because that's how we know what God's wills and his wishes are. Okay. Gimel, and even deeper. What is before Parshas Noach, the actual work that takes place in this week's Parsha of Noach, Yitoisef Eleu Gadol Yoiser Gabi Ma'amor Metzav Metzar Habriya. Kerumaz v'siyoyma v'choisma shel Parshas Bereshis Oides Mala Shel Noach Noach Masar Chaim Ein Havai. We said in addition to this great situation from creation of Parshas of Bereshis, we see hinted that at the end of Parshas Bereshis, God said the world was not doing so good. I created, I set it up in a particular way, and no one's listening to me. And maybe I should destroy the world. And then what happens is Noach came along and found favor in God's eyes. In other words, God had a realization that there are those who want to be working and helping God sustain the world in a proper way. Bria So'ilam Kasir Bereshis Bara Elokim Asher Shamayim V'Ha'aretz Lamed Beis Pa'amim Elokim. We know in the recounting of Bereshis, God's name Elokim, which is the name that he uses to conceal himself in nature, was repeated 32 times in Maaseh Bereshis. And of course, we know that Kivan Shabriya So'ilam Hu Al Yidei Im Elokim, that therefore God created the world through the name Elokim. That means that God gave power and imbued the world and each one of us with the power to help him sustain this world. Of course, Lamed Beis is the gematria for Lev, meaning the heart, which is ultimately what God wants. And it's the source of all personal, what's the word I'm looking for? Traumas, blocks, obstacles, blind spots, the reason why we're not performing properly. And I forbring about this at length at the forbringing at Aliyah over a Simchas Torah. But when your heart has wounds inside of it, it affects your unconscious mind, and your conscious and your unconscious mind are disconnected, meaning your heart and your brain are disconnected. And your heart and your brain are disconnected, you kind of work at a very superficial level. The idea is to reconnect those things, and ultimately the service in this world, the whole point is to rectify the heart. In the future to come, the brain will be the main thing that is rectified. But right now, it's about digging in and repairing the wounds in our heart. And that's from work. That's from digging inside. The God... because we know that God's name Elokim is the same numerical equivalent of Teva, which means nature. Which means God wants us to work within the nature to repair this world. He doesn't want us to rely on miracles. Havaya mitlabesh with other ones b'shem Elokim, Sheshem Havaya, excuse me, and we see that God's name Havaya, which is a level of God that is above this world, is enclosed within the name Elokim that He created the world with. Shavakwach Yisavos who Mishem Havaya, Makom Yisavos will fall who are you did. Dabshus to Shem Havaya, Mishem Elokim. Looking Shem Havaya, Eino Misgala Bahabri, Begilu Mishem Elokim Levad. If God's name Elokim was revealed in this world, there would be no tests, there would be no free choice, because we would all see the hand of God clearly and openly and everything. The fact that it's concealed is what gives us free choice and makes us think that we're just occupying a world of nature. And the unique thing of Noach that found favor in the eyes of God, it says he found favor in the eyes of Havaya, meaning he revealed a level of godliness that was previously not in the world. There was a level of godliness that was above the normal channels of nature. In other words, he tapped into a deeper reality than what was present in the world around. And it comes out from this in the world that was created through the name Elokim, but it was the idea is to reveal the name Havaya. In other words, God hid himself in creation. Judaism is not a religion. This concept of religion, it's a horrible word. Judaism is basically that we are God's emissaries to reveal him, meaning the name Havaya, and a world that conceals him, meaning the name Elokim. And that's the whole point of Torah, mitzvahs, and prayer, is to reveal to the world that there is a creator and there is a prime mover, and God continues to create the world, and he's running the world, even though it appears to be running itself. That's the ultimate goal. In order to acknowledge and recognize and reveal this name Havaya, in the name of Elokim, the level of God that is above the nature, if you will, in the nature. Because the tzimtzum, or the divine contraction and concealment, truly covered over God's real essence of the name Havaya. And by revealing the name Havaya, by revealing him and penetrating in the existence of the world, which is created to the name of Elohim, then you're able to draw down and reveal an even higher level of the name Havaya. It's called darkness from light from darkness. And the light that you reveal from the darkness is a much loftier light than the light that exists without darkness. Wow, got a nasty cough here. And the idea is to continue to reveal this level of godly energy. Once you've tapped into a deeper level of God reality, it's not like, okay, now I figured it out. It's just one layer of the onion. You got to keep peeling and keep peeling. And that's why the Tefillah Nila that we just finished at the end of the prayer, we say 7 times. Havayu Elokim, Havayu Elokim. That this level of Havaya above the nature is the same God that's within the nature. It's just concealed. And that's the idea, is to reveal it. Noach, and that's the idea that God created the rainbow. The rainbow, which unfortunately has been hijacked by a group of people that will remain unnamed at this point in time, who are going exactly against what God wants. That's the irony of it. But the whole point of the rainbow is, believe it or not, the rainbow is not a pleasant thing to see, even though it looks very pretty. And you're not meant to tell another person, oh, there's a rainbow. Because a rainbow is basically God reminding us that he's pissed. And he would destroy the world right now. But he made a covenant and a deal not to. So it's a reminder to us that God has made an agreement with us that I will not destroy the world because I'm entrusting you to do tshuva, to fix up your wrongful ways and help me be a partner in creation and revealing the essence of God, again, in a world that conceals him. The Yoshevoisi, and I will not destroy it again. Boyfriend to me, the have a hefsek. And God says, I will allow the world to continue to exist, and I will never cease the existence of the world. Just like you see the sun rises and the moon comes out and the stars, everything's running on circles. It's a system, a solar system that God set up. It's fascinating how anyone could believe that all this just operates on its own. It's just right. Even an automatic watch has to be wound or it stops running. Like, who is running the whole solar system and all these planets and all these stars, and how is nothing colliding and how is everything working in such seamless perfection? It's crazy. Come on, I already said that. And God said, I am God, I have not changed. Even though you see a world, it hasn't affected God. And this is one of the paths to contemplate on God's greatness by pausing and just looking at the world and at the complexity and how God is running everything simultaneously. Wow. Really clogged up here. The Kashti Nasi Kashes he miskashtafot Kurni Hashemesh Inyan. The Hainu Shigam Indian Min Haaretz Nasa Mizrachak Hashemetecha Bo or Hashemesh Havaya. Talking about the sign, the rainbow. But basically, Ela Kishrim Zelazah Shikima Oidam Nagisha Hakashes. And we see these things are connected. The fulfillment of the world to the emphasizing of the Brit of the rainbow of the covenant Kamosh mezuzot ois habris asher kiyamasei b'nei uven kol basar asher lo haaretz. And this is a covenant that I have made with all flesh in this world. Shemazem rumaz shemetziosei shel kol basar asher lo haaretz nikaram izgala koach b'vos umachayim umachavel isay. That I will continue to sustain the world and it will continue to exist. And this is to the name of Vaya that is above the world. In other words, the world is like God's little yo-yo. He's playing with it, but he's much greater than the world. Havaya means the creator. God is, he was, and he will be. He's above time. He created the past, he'll create the future, and he's creating the here and now, and he's above all of this. This is the essence of God. The koach ha'atzmai shebachayosem ha'ayin yesh machus v'atzmusar sha'amatzil b'ruchu shemetzios ma'atzmusai ve'eno ola ma'eza ela hakadma ha'asfeshalon. That God creates every single thing from absolutely nothing. And with his very essence and being that is completely above the world, and nothing preceded him. He's a creator. Nothing created God. And only God is empowered and has the ability to continuously recreate the world from absolutely nothing whatsoever. There's no, you could put all the scientists together in the world and get them to try to create something from nothing, and they can't do it. They could create something from nothing, from something that already exists. They could change the structure of something. They could add to it. They could change it, but they can't create something from nothing. Only God. Hey, in addition to this, Murumas Parshas Lech Metchil in the course of Tifila and the Mecham B'Shabbos Parshas Noach B'Siyom Shabbos Yemei HaKayv. In addition to this, we see the connection to Parshas Lech Lecha that we will begin reading in Mincha time in this upcoming week on Shabbos. I lost my place. Okay. Lech Lecha, Mora'al Halicha Amitis. Lech Lecha literally means to truly go. Such a beautiful sentence. In other words, we can go and we can work, but are you truly going out? Not of your physical surroundings. Are you going out of your blocked consciousness, the blocked heart? Are you digging deeper into the deep recesses in the heart where the pain lies? Or are you working and going through life on a very superficial surface level and just hoping everything will be okay? Lech Lecha means to really be truthful in what you're doing and really be conscious and aware all of the time and to continuously dig deeper within yourself. And the Rebbe says, what does it mean to truly Lech Lecha, to truly go? To go completely beyond the place where you're holding before. To really, really work on yourself. And when you truly do Lech Lecha, God says, I will show you who you really are. You're not that image that you see in the mirror. It's distorted. You're not who your parents think you are. You're not who your friends think you are. You're not who you think you are. You're only who God created you. But in order to get in touch with who God created you, you got to do Lech Lecha. You got to go out of your comfort zone. You got to go out of your place of where you're working in a very superficial level. It means to dig deep, to go deep into the resources of the heart and plow through the pain and to find the ultimate true essence of who we are. And that's work. That's real Lech Lecha. And through the actual service of the Jewish people in rectifying and refining the world in an authentic way, in every situation they may find themselves, then they will find themselves connected truly with God. And not only that, when you rectify yourself, that's why we learned that in the future to come, Yitzchak will be the highest of the fathers of the Avos. Because when you rectify yourself, how do you spread out well springs? You can spread them out superficially, but the way to spread them out deep is to go deep inside, right? The deeper you dig into the earth, the more powerful that burst of energy that comes out. If you just dig very low and then just go wide, you'll get some water coming up, but it's not going to be well springs. Well springs comes from going inside. And the deeper you go down, you automatically heal the world around you. How do you know? You look at the people around you. Your wife, your kids, your friends, your community, the people that you're influencing. When you start seeing them changing, it's a good sign that things are changing inside of you. If you don't see any results and you don't feel like anything around you is changing, it's a good sign that you're working still at a very superficial level. And this is, the Rebbe says, how by digging into yourself, you can connect the deeper level of Havaya, which is below the surface, with the name of Elohim, which is within the nature. Because even though the name Elohim is connected to the actual world, the true Havaya, which is above the world, is also connected as well. It's one. Vav. Al pi amor la'el sheb'shavua haparshas Noach lola avoda dakam hashana kulo kafi shehi b'foal uvan sheyom haShabbos kodesh parshas Noach hu mehazman hamit'im lecheshbon tzedek shel avoda b'foal hashana hadasha nimitzah kavah b'toich. This is an amazing sicha, and the Rebbe is basically telling us that's just like we did a Cheshbon Tzedek and Elul about the past year, and Yom Kippur is a focus in the upcoming year. Parshas Noach is time to do a Cheshbon Tzedek, a righteous accounting, and ask yourself, how have I started off my year? All those good resolutions that I made, all the things I said that I'm going to do, all the things that I said I'm going to refrain from doing, how am I doing? Because it's only been a week. And if I haven't hopped the rhyme in this first week, there's a good chance I'm not going to. In other words, right now is the time for us to really dig deep and ask ourselves, are we fulfilling the work that we said we're going to? Have we really changed? Have we really transformed? Or is it just lip service that we made to God throughout the month of Tishrei? And now we're just kind of fell back into our own rut, if you will, and nothing's changed. This is the time to really think these things over. The B'chaim called Prati Einin Ha'avodah D'Sheshir Me'amaseh the Yom HaShabbos Manas the Tikon the Hashlem B'Einin Ha'avodah B'Fol Taklis HaShabbos. This Shabbos is the time to do a deep righteous accounting and figure out how our service is going and how we're setting ourselves up for this upcoming year in our inner work. Wow. My head is still congested from the plane. Yesh Lomar, she'as yes ha'cheshbon tzedek ha'Shabbos parshas Noach al ha'shavua ha'rishon al ha'avodah b'foal tzarek lo ha'izmo even ha'misein la'hatukna sha'avodah b'foal she'ikra v'takli taklisa l'galus ha'idam d'regas ha'lehush l'man ha'voy ha'vayu Elokim. And this righteous accounting we do in the Shabbos parshas Noach regarding the first week of our service in working the world, it must be real. It must be real. We must have a real view of how our week went and the ultimate goal of what our week is about. And that is to draw down godly energy above the world, within the world. And that Havaya and Elohim are truly one. And this, of course, also includes the most important part of everything, which is tshuva. That's the goal. Shuv Yisrael Hashem Elokecha. Return Jewish people until Hashem your God, Havaya your God. The tshuva he ba'ifin shehavaya naseh Elokecha. The shemas hatshuva Yom Kippur Shisyoima v'choisma the Amiras Ze Pamim Havaya Elokim. Hayayisam Nakach Naseh Gam Cheshbon Seg Ba'ifin Alish Yisrael God. Is Havaya Elokim is really what our tshuva is coming down to. It's my connection to God as I'm acting in the world, as I'm reacting in the world, as I'm forging relationships with myself, with my wife, with my kids, with my friends, with my neighbors, with my co-workers, with my boss, with whoever it may be. Is that reflecting my true connection to God above? Because if it's not, then something's wrong. Something's distorted. Because Havaya is Elohim. In other words, God wants us to be happy. He wants us to be in tune. He wants us to be in a state of flow. That doesn't mean that things are easy. That doesn't mean that you work less. That doesn't mean this, I'm working too hard. I need to get into a state of flow. Because it doesn't exist. Your actual physical work week has nothing to do with your menucha nefesh and menucha guf. You could work 5 hours a week. And if you're not healed internally and someone cuts you off, or someone says something that pisses you off, or something goes the way you don't want and you fly off the handle, you're not in tune. It has nothing to do with how much or how little you're working. It has to do with whether Havaya is Elohim. And if you're not tested in work, guess what? You'll be tested in somewhere else. Wherever you go, until you heal what you need to heal, it's going to come with you. Your shadow doesn't disappear just because you move to the countryside or just because you work less or you go on vacation more. It doesn't alter it. It's still the same avoda, and that's the idea. In fact, the Rebbe is very against retiring. The Rebbe is very against working less than 40 hours a week. The Rebbe is very against doing anything to slow down your production in this world until you're dead. Because of that exact reason, he knows that all that will do is bring on an early onslaught of depression and frustration. Because now you feel like you're no longer doing anything towards this end. Okay, Zion. First, we have to start the Rebbe is getting into shifting gears a little bit with a general understanding that every Jew is presumed to be kosher. In other words, you must have a good eye how you look at every Jew. And this is why people get confused. When the Rebbe said all the work is done, that doesn't mean we don't have to do tshuva. That doesn't mean, we're just living in a state of redemption. No. That means redemptive energy is now in the world. And that the general energy of the Jewish people in the world has brought this energy down into this physical world. And we look at another Jew, we must look at him in a positive way and assume that everything they're doing is kosher. But when it comes to yourself, the Rebbe says, you must take out a giant magnifying glass and dig deep into every crevice inside of your heart, in your head, and your body, and not presume you're kosher, and not presume that you're working the way you need to be. You need to constantly dig inside of yourself and look for things that you need to improve. You can't say, Gula's here. I don't need to do tshuva. I'm living in redemption. And then when your wife gets angry, you start screaming and throwing things at her. It doesn't work that way. And that's why the Rebbe says, to have a good eye is for others. But for yourself, you have to constantly look at yourself as you need to re-examine yourself and dig deeper. And this means going into your thoughts, your words, and your deeds. Think about what you said during the day. Think about how you thought about other people during the day. Think about what you processed during the day. Think about what you did. This is what has to be examined. The Rebbe said the main test is your deed. It doesn't take a holy person to sit in shul all day long and learn Torah and not go into the world. This is when you're going into the world and you've got to interact with people. And there's people who are triggering you and you're reminding of things that you're not happy about inside of you. and you're blaming the other people for these things. This is an instant reflection of what's wrong. My wife and I got the farbring for some couples over a Yom Tov, one of the meals, and listening to, well, he doesn't want to change the diaper, and she doesn't want to help with this, and he doesn't want, it's such superficial things. I'm not judging, but what they're not realizing is that all this is deep-seated triggers inside. It all comes to town of what is going on inside of me that is causing this energy to come to me. And this is where the digging must take place, and it must take place in Maisa B'Fual, an actual deed. The tshuva. And the Rebbe says, how do you fix it? You have to do tshuva. And the main tshuva is in the heart. It's in the heart. That's why I'd say that words come from the heart, penetrate the heart. You know, you're talking to someone and you're talking with your brain, and you're just quoting something, and the Rebbe says, and the Sika so-and-so, and the Halacha says, and so-and-so, and this says, and so. It's not answered. Because it's got to have a, beyond that blockage, it's got to go into the heart. And that's why tshuva is through the heart. And the Gemara says we must reflect and do a righteous tshuva. It has to be real. And how do you know it's real? When it comes to reality. When you're tested with that same person or that same situation or the same whatever it is that's triggering you, and you're dealing with it in a totally different way. Because you've fixed your consciousness. If you don't fix what's going on in your consciousness and in your heart, you'll never fix the outside world. And the main emphasis of tshuva is between a man and God. No, I'm sorry, man and his friends. Chaver is friends. I mean, that's right. בדוגמה זה גזירה כדאז ניסן לא לחזר. גזירה איננו בסכם. גם שחסיב הרשו חזר של שלום הוא בפני של עשר ותורה בעניין של מצווה. ודאי שלדבר נבוא גם חס ושלום, מה רואי כבן שבפועל, וזה דבר הדוח, רק צריך לבסר בזה. So the main work of tshuva is between you and your friend. How are you reacting to your brother? How are you reacting to one another? In fact, the Rebbe even says that if you say Shalom Aleichem to someone, especially on Shabbat, and they don't return the Shalom Aleichem, it's like stealing. You were kind to that person, they were kind back to you. It's like that. וכיוון שחשבון צדק הוא באופן שמפשפש בפרט עניינים משתדל ועוסק בתיקונים במעשה בפועל. The Rebbe said we have to fix our deeds. We have to work within the boundaries of the physical world. לפי ערך ויחס למדינה להגבלה לפרט עניינים שמנוח ועוסק בתיקון שלהם. כל פרט ופרט לפי עניינים. In other words, we have to work in all the details of our life, and it has to be done in such a way of menucha. In other words, it's a hard thing to do. It's to work on yourself without getting stressed. Damn it! I did it again. We beat ourselves up. We're our own worst enemies. We're our own worst critics. So the Rebbe said, you got to dig deep. You got to let go of the anger. You got to get lower the guilt. And you just have to be honest with yourself and find place to have rachamim in yourself, mercy for yourself. And realize we're imperfect beings. And God's not mad at us. He's not judging us. But he wants us to work on perfecting this imperfected mold that we're in. Oh, I already said that. No, I didn't. And we have to have this level of menucha, of calmness, into every deal we do, including prayer, and Torah learning. But they're going to and by doing this, we will nullify any undesirable things. Because a little bit of light pushes away a lot of darkness. And how much more so a lot of light. In such a way that emphasizes the fixing up and the completion of all the details of our life. It's all in the details. The difference in, you could take 10 doctors, lawyers, insurance adjusters, realtors, mechanics, any field you want. And they could be doing the same type of work. And the ones who are able to go deeper into the details are the ones who will be successful. It's the same thing with our lives. You got to search out the dark spots. They're hidden. We're not aware they're there. It's called self-love. We delude ourselves. And how do we delude ourselves? We look at everyone else like they're the problem, right? I'm perfectly fine. My wife is nuts. My neighbor's nuts. My boss, nuts. My coworkers are nuts. They're all crazy, but I'm fine. Because we don't realize how we delude ourselves. You got to get into the details. You got to dwell into the little minutiae of things. Shleimus amitis וכי ורבי סמלס גם יחד. שחשבון צדקתיכם לשלמוס העניינים בפרטים האלה שבהם. The Rebbe says, and the idea is, oh wait, I'm sorry, I skipped a sentence. Yishna finalization shemetumarois, especially that I said that into the details. Shleimus amitis וכי ורבי סמלס, and the main true completion is by combining these two advantages together. What are they? To make a righteous accounting of what's going on, to be honest with yourself, to be transparent with yourself, and to work in all the little details and fixing of what needs to be fixed. Not I'm all right, I'm fine. I don't need help, I'm fine. Okay. And the idea is to go to higher levels. Within all the boundaries of all the details. And this is how we draw it on the name Havaya, into the details of the name Elohim in our lives. And this is the idea of Parshas Noach, to dig deep. The Rebbe says, in addition to this, we must negate any bitterness or sorrowness from this cheshbon etzek. The idea isn't to sit and do a righteous, honest accounting of where we're holding and then beat ourselves up for a week about what schmucks we are and how stupid we are and we can't believe how we acted this way. No, the idea is to go into what's wrong, take a glimpse. If you hurt another person, by all means, do everything you can to do tshuva and repair that and ask for forgiveness. Same with God. But the main work here is to rectify what's going on. To reach a higher state of consciousness and awareness so you don't keep doing it. That's the most important thing. And it must be drawn down into all the details of your life, but in a deeper way. So this sikha, by the way, is like you could do a whole entire lifetime of mental health counseling and psychiatric help and work from the sikha. The Rebbe has given so much, and again, we don't have enough time together, but we could probably spend hours and hours for bringing about the depth that are inside of these words here about this importance of working on yourself in a calm and peaceful way. The idea is to reach completion. Shalem, shalom. Completion is the key to peace. Gam hayesa, and you're right. All that I would doing mahashlim with Hashem Avaya Kanimshach Mizgala Bafal Gam Ba B'Shem Elokim Lochin Nasan Cheshbon Tzedek Shuv V'Toku Regesh Shal Simcha V'Ta'anu. You can dig into yourself. You can have that moment of a realization that things are not good and you did wrong. But then you have to do tshuva, and it has to come into a way of peace and tainu and joy and fixing by bringing this higher level of godly energy that is above the world and inside your hearts into your day-to-day life. Ches. The Indians mudgash gan bo'efen avoda the yom hashabats. Teichen shal noach v'nucha v'shivasan the yom hashabats. And we see this emphasized specifically in the service of the day of Shabbat, and especially in the menucha of Yom Shabbat as it's connected to Parshas Noach. In the Nai shal Yom Shabbat, Yom Hashvi, Shabbat, Havaya Elokecha. This is a day of rest for Hashem your God. Havaya b'Shem Elokim, and then the drawing down and revealing the name Havaya in Elokim, which takes place on every Shabbat. Mavor b'Drushi Chassidus, as Chassidus explains, but Perush had Ksuv Yechal Elokim b'Yom Hashvi. And God completed everything, and on the seventh day He rested. Because on Shabbat, the name Havaya, God's higher level of energy is revealed in the world in the name of Shabbat. Shabbos Oisius Teshuv. And Shabbat, of course, is the same letters of Teshuv, which means to return. The tshuva, the Shabbos, he tshuva ila'ah. Shabbat is what we call tshuva ila'ah. Shahaya simcha rabba. Tshuva ila'ah is tshuva tatal. Lower tshuva is returning lower hay. It means getting out of the dirt. Watching what you speak, watching what you eat, watching what you see, watching what you do, getting out of klipa and switching to kedusha. Upper tshuva, which is returning the upper hay to the yud, is a tremendous joy and happiness of returning to your true self, your true identity, and your true purpose in this world. And that, my friends, is the ultimate purpose. And that takes the ultimate humility and the ultimate bittul to continuously bow your head to Hashem and embrace and bless and thank Him for every single thing that you're going through in your life. Not an easy task. And this includes removing and negating any undesirable things. And how do we also, one of the keys to go deeper is by going deeper in our Torah learning. Because all three of these levels of our soul are connected to Machshava, Dibur, and Maisa, are connected to. We know that Maisa is connected to mitzvot, to good deeds. Dibor, which is connected to the heart, is prayer, and Machshava, which is connected to the brain, is Torah learning. So, in addition to working on yourself, it's important to go deeper into your Torah learning, into your divine prayer, into your avoda, and into your mitzvot, because that's how you're going to release a higher level of energy that's going to assist you in your fixing in your tshuva. But Tachlis Shleim is to bring you to the ultimate completion. Boyfriend shall voisei derucha derucha. You're literally spirit to spirit, face to face with God. The and this is a foretaste of things how they will be in the future to come. And the knowledge of God will cover the earth like water covers the knowledge. Water covers the ocean bed. Oh, it's a pretty short sikha. In addition to this, we have to emphasize that not only needs tshuva, but it needs to be done b'simcha. Every single thing that Rebbe has emphasized to us is it must be done b'simcha. It cannot be in a depressing way. Don't get me wrong. When you're digging inside, you're uncovering some deep, dark places, and there's demons in there, and there's skeletons in there, and it's frightening, and it's painful. And there's nothing wrong with getting into that pain and experience that momentary pain, frustration, angst, whatever's there, but not to let it take you down. To pull out of it and switch to simcha. K'ivan sheboim ze al tam chodesh Tishrei meruba ba'amodos she'eino omerim atachnoin, and we know during the month of Tishrei and this final week we're in, we don't say tachanu. Ad siyum shal chodesh mishchala lo yimarat tachanun b'chodesh mar cheshbon ve'ein regalim ad amitis tatachnoin. And this is emphasizing the fact that our tshuva, which the Rebbe is saying we need to do now in this first week of Noah, needs to be b'simcha, because we're not saying tachanu, meaning God doesn't want us to be sad right now. Test. But Gashi is sort of a hakana ben noiga the cheshbon serek b'shabbos parshas Noach b'shabbos shanazu, and the Rebbe said, and all this is emphasized even more in this current year. First of all, and as the Frierdiker Rebbe has said, the general service, not our own individual work, the general service is already complete. Including the polishing the buttons, and we're all standing ready. The Kabbalah to accept and receive the inner dimension and the face of Mashiach, a righteous Redeemer. And this is requiring a righteous account. Before mamash. And this should bring about the true and complete redemption in actuality. And more specifically, גם כשידע אין יש בנפשי מאמור המצב שיש עצר עניינים צריכים לתיקון, אין זה בסתירה חס ושלום, דויסי של נשיא דרנו, שכל נשלמה עבודה באומר ומכנים לקבל הנבט שיחדו. And that's exactly the point. And the Rebbe says, the fact that the Frierdiker Rebbe said that all the work is done, and all we have to do is welcome Mashiach, this is not a contradiction to the fact that each one of us still has things that we need to fix up. Right? This is not, I see people, unfortunately, say, no, Mashiach's here. I don't need to do tshuva. Mashiach's here. No, it's the opposite. Mashiach's here, so you need to do tshuva. You need to start fixing up all these things that need to be fixed up so you can receive the energy of Mashiach. Because if not, it's not coming in. Ki avora b'klalus v'nei Yisrael b'meshech kol hadoros tzricha liyos b'zman hagalus kedei levo lashlimas legulam. And the service in general of the Jewish people throughout the continuation of the exile, up until this time, that we see that we have reached the state of the completion for the redemption. That's the general service of the Jewish people. That's not us as individuals. It's Yama V'Shlem. V'Ein B'Yora V'Ches V'Rakal Ichor Hagula. V'Loichen Gam Es Chaser V'Avodas Kol Chafratz. V'Meshek B'Zman V'Chon Hagula She'ezot Subach V'Shtehiyah. But on a personal, individual way, for sure, we're not finished with our work. Don't delude yourself. I see it all the time, unfortunately, with people who say, Mashiach's here. I don't know, what do I have to do? It's God's problem. It's God's work. No, don't delude yourself to think you're living in a state of redemption. If you're living in a state of redemption, believe me, you'll know, because you'll never get into arguments with anyone. You'll never get into fights with anyone. You'll never get angry. You'll never, ever perceive anything as bad in another Jew, for sure not even in yourself. Everything will be revealed good in your thought, in your speech, and your deed, and you'll be a walking, shining pillar of light that people will be running after and saying, what are you doing? How do you live like that? How can I be like it? So it's a delusional thing to think we're living in a state of redemption individually just because the energy's in the world. To work on living in a state of personal redemption, for sure we need to be doing that. But this is not a contradiction to the fact that the general service of the Jewish people is done. And we're all standing prepared for the redemption. It's not a contradiction, these two things. But this tshuva must be in a way of simcha. בידי שתכף מיד ממש בו הגאולה מצווה השלמה. And through this, through your individual tshuva, the simcha, this will bring redemption. B'sugan acher, and explain it in a different way. Klal is when Yisrael shehem kuma acha shlema nemtzeim ba'amod ha'metzav da'adam shalem b'kol ramach ivrei v'shasai gidim heim beruchnias v'heim begashmis. Each one of us is composed, and it's the potential for completion. Beruchnias and begashmis. 248 limbs and 365 connecting tissues. The chesron and a prat who komol yuchash az chuli koch et soni ba'afar prati shetikune ay refuah v'kala b'chayri mimera al mehira refuah rafa reshus refuah the refuahs klam yichat refuah shayda hatshuva. Rebbe says that the last sickness we have of the Golas is fixed through tshuva. The shleimas are refuah, and then we will reach complete healing. And that the teachings of the Frierdiker Rebbe and the life of the Frierdiker Rebbe and his work is continuing up until our times. The Rebbe many times said that he is a continuation of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Allah has kama v'kama la'achri sha'avroi kama asiras shenein yosema arbeim shana shenitein Hashem lachem leiv l'dash inim l'rois is nayim lishma. And the fact that it's been over 40 years since the Frierdiker Rebbe has gave us his teachings, if you will, we already have a heart to know, eyes to see, and ears to hear. I mean, we have all the potential we need for complete tshuva. We just gotta dig in. Dig in. That's the name of tonight's shir. Snap. Hi. How much more so as we find ourselves in the year Tafshin Nun Beis. It's frightening to think that this was said 33 years ago. How much more so this applies to us now in Tafshin Pei Hey. Russia Tevis Shalah. And the Rebbe said, this is the year that I will show you wonders. And if you listen to my 1 minute blessing on Erev Rosh Hashanah, I mentioned that this is the year of Pei Hey, which means Palot Hashem, the wonders of Hashem. So there's a definite connection between this year and the year the Rebbe gave the Sikha 33 years ago. Wonders in every single thing. Sheklal kanyanim kulam. L'chol l'reish ve'ikar v'niflois v'geula mitzvah shlema. K'beitz ha'seichem eretz mitzrayim arino niflois. And the true redemption, where I will show you once again wonders, like when I took you out of Egypt. Prat achish ha'kavran yishalem chodesh harishon shel harishana. Tishrei oisius reishis, and we see the first month of the year, Tishrei, is the same letters of reishis beginning. Shukol kol hashana kulo. V'oimdim v'yom ha'shavat harishon. And we're standing in the first Shabbat of the work week, the Shleimus Avodas Ha'olam, of our completion of the work in the world. And we already know that Shabbos is connected to redemption, but Prat Yom HaShabbat La'achei Chatzos, especially after Chatzos in the afternoon, Azman the Suda Tishlishis Akishura Im Yaakov, and the third meal, which is connected to the Shlishis to Yaakov, Shlishi Sha'avis, the third of the Avis. Connected with a shlema based on the shlishi, connected to the third temple and the full redemption. V'skonenim hakriya b'Torah lech lecha, where we will read lech lecha this week. Or to sharecha to and I will show you. Sivui unitim koach l'kol echad Yisrael l'klal Yisrael, and this gives the power to every single one of the Jewish people. The leches masgalo al hagula, to go from exile to redemption. Boyfriend Shahalicha B'Kfo. Shirumaz Gam Heroes Halicha Shalemos was a he boyfriend the Oro. In a Shmea. Vadai Shakavar call Hatim. Call us that Shuba. Akshav Ein Haroy Tule Elabim Shepsikinu Atzmayin. It's all dependent on Mashiach. Yud. And in a continuation of what we said above about this righteous accounting that we are all going to be doing for sure this week, after it's going to be an awesome week, and we're going to do righteous accounting on Shabbos. Yud, as we just said, as its connection to redemption. Shayach v'yoser v'teichen the techanene omoret la'el can come. And the whole idea of Kish Lavana is connected to this point. God says, I will continue to exist the world to exist day and night, and the light is dependent on the sun and the moon. And God created the world where He sustains the patterns of creation. As we said in the first day, God separated between day and night, light and darkness. We see this in the bracha of Kiddush Lavana. Hazak v'zman nitain lahem she'alu yishna es tefkidim. And this is referring to the permanence that God said in the patterns of the sun and the moon. All the different movements of the sun and the moon, the Siva and the stars and the spheres. The Goga Hachama Yom Klo bihad v'sera kabua lechidush alabana she'enu b'mila kol yimei hakodesh ela v'emza hakodesh v'chalacha v'ta'amas al shenis'amat l'gan achar chazara v'netra shloisha al zeh v'rachim habracha mi'charet kedusha hakodesh, especially when we're blessing the new moon and the moon when it's reaching its state of fullness, which is halfway through the month. Oh, sorry, I got a little stretching here. Oh. So it would be enough that the Jewish people merited to welcome the Shekhinah once a month in Kiddush Lavana. Kiddush Lavana, and it's a foretaste of the future to come. When the Jewish people, like the moon, will be renewed. Shimon Zainin Hasidi in the Chadash Kamois. Hari Anu Chila Makabli in Panei Hashchina. Bazogam Hata Amin Shoimim the Kiddush Lavana David Macha Mashiach. Hai Vekayam. As we say that the Mashiach is alive. He's alive. Shemachalusayin in Mashal Lavana. Asina Chadash Kamois. Knesset Yeshua Chazor Lahatavek. Ba'ala Shahu HaKodesh Baruch Dugma Salavana Mchadesh Shestim Hachamash Na'ama Shemesh Megain Havai Lochein Oisin Smichot Rakudim Bikudesh HaChodesh Dugma Simchas V'Nisim. And therefore it says in the Gemara, we must dance with great joy in Kiddush Lavana because it's like a wedding. Yorah Avoimek Yoser and deeper. Biskonon Torah Kabbalah's Chassidus. According to Kabbalah and Chassidus, the inner dimension of the Torah. The Vanat, all spheres of Malchus. The moon is connected to the sphere of Malchus. That has nothing in of itself. And it receives from the light of the sun, which is likened to the sphere of Zah. Shemesh Havaya, which is the son of Havaya. Which is drawn down into the name Elokim, which is the moon. Excuse me. Shemesh Megain Havaya Elokim. Va'al Pizah Ishnoim Ba'or Halavana Ba'oifen Kabbalas Or Hamam Rim Al Oifen Hamshaka Vigilit Shem Havaya V'Shem Elokim. And the fact that the moon receives its light from the sun is hinted to the idea of Elokim, God's name of nature, receives its energy from God's name of Havaya, above the nature. See the Bosh Mizmala Pigimas Lavana, but Loya Boshumi Udavihia or Halavana Kor Hachama. But in the future to come, the light of the moon will be equal to the light of the sun. And then before we will have the completion of the name Havaya and the name Elohim. Yesh Marsh Bekiddus Lavana, it's the same Kiddus Lavana, Nirumas, Klalus, Masieno, with a single call, Zman Meshach HaGalus. This is a foretaste of how things will be in the completion of the times at the end of the exile from all our deeds at the time of the Galus. And this will bring forth the true and complete redemption. The ultimate purpose is to build a dwelling place for God below. And we see this is the work of the Jewish people, which is likened to Malchus. And we receive our energy from God, which is likened to Zah. And the Jewish people will be returned to our state of full glory, and the moon will be returned to its full state like the sun. And that will take place in Yemot Mashiach. And it's based on our avodas here down below now in the exile in these final moments. Good base. Move on. From this we must understand. Base, as we are completing the first week of our service in the world in this year of Toshunan Base. The year I will show you wonders in everything. And everything is dependent on Mashiach. The importance of doing Kiddush Levana in the most holy way possible. Because in the future the moon will be renewed like the sun. But Pratius Yosef are more specific. The call the Rosh first of all. But we gadim chashuvim naim. We should dress in our fineries, usually after Shabbos, the Kiddush Levana. Ruchav overroy im haderas hamelach, and it should be in way fit for king in the most large way possible. Gan boisam koimois sha'arata lo tikfo al zeh. Klogam chasiras benogan hazman the Kiddush Levana shemitzino hazachi lukeman hagi achar gimel yemim the mulay. The achar zayin. There's different customs as to when we should do Kiddush Levana. We currently hold that we do it on the Motzi Shabbat after the 7th of the month, but before the 15th of the month, and it varies sometimes the 14th depending on the Molad and the moon's birth, but it's usually around that time. Im Lael Motzi Shabbos hu koydem yud b'chodesh Shavat im hu achar chach im kaminyan ad Motzi Shabbat. Well, yeah, based on the layers, different customs the Rebbe is going through. But the most important thing is and mainly the Kiddush Levana, the Tek Kavana, the Yuchedes, the Machar, the Rois, the Fall, Tekaf Me'ar, David Mashiach. The most important thing is when we're doing Kiddush Levana, that the intention that we are preparing to welcome Mashiach, and it's a foretaste of welcoming the redemption. Aideh Choisfa, B'Dirisha, B'Kashra, Al HaGeula, B'Siyah Mechaisim Kiddush Levana. Kasha Es Hashem Elokechem V'Adaber Malchum Mashiach, Yud Gimel, the final letter. Short Sikha tonight. Yehirat may be a God's book. So Oyedifnei Kiddush Levana Chodesh Mar Cheshbon, even before we do Kiddush Levana this month. For Pat Shana Zuk, Shekevan Shecheshbon V'Kislev, Shnehem Elohim, that these months are full months. Yishna Shlisha Donashim Shleimi, that there are 30 days instead of 29. Ahem Shechachad, and one continuation Sha'al Yidei Zeh Nasis Hazak. Tchila Shana Ah Shleimas Chadash. Shuvaraz Ah Shleimas the Manisha Asida the Chadash Kamois, showing the completion of the Jewish people, how we will be revealed in Mashiach times. Is Kayam, Bano, Mikrash, Kosu, Vakashas, Hashem Elohech, the Art, Davi, Macham, Amen, and Davi, Macham, Mashiach, Tekom Yad Mamash. but Pashtu should take on the Arbatikian, that Siva Shakurin, take on this man and Mich. Even before we reach Parshas Nachaha and Mecha, we should go. All arts are share arecha to the land that God will show you. The Retzena Kadusha, to our holy land. Kivan Shulazarecha Nesati Esa Arts Nazois Minha, Nahar Mitzrayim Ad, and Nahar Hagado, Nahar Paras, Esa Kanini, Ves Kanizirek, and money. And we will once again get all the land that was promised us and inherit the final 3 lands. And it's Esaramas to have 10 total lands. Ratzeno Kedusha Atzmi, and our holy land will be complete. Holech Venoisa Hanava, the Tzad Yerushalayim, including Jerusalem, Har Maria, and Har of Maria, Shem Guf, Al Makoim HaMizbeach, Makoim Mikavan B'Yosef, Yishnan Nasa Lefanecha, Mitzvahs Retzanach, Klogam Shlemas Kedusha Levana, and all our mitzvahs will then be complete, including the mitzvah of Kiddush Levana. And we will welcome the Shekhinah face to face. Yira Es Elokim B'Tzion, and God will return to Tzion. Even more than this, Al Panei Ha'arayin Havaya, Ha'adayin Havaya, we will see the face of God. Klal Gam Yuchad D'Shem Havaya D'Shem Elokim Shemagash B'Kiddush Levan, and both name and Elokim and Havaya will be returned as one. And Havayu Elokim. Ba'ali Achar Elui, we will keep going higher and higher. Zion Pa'amin, Havayu Elokim, Sho'imin Banilas, Yom Kippur, just like we said in the Nila prayer of Yom Kippur. And after that, the Rebbe repeated 7 times. Havayu Elokim, 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 Nashana Haba, B'Yushalayim, Hazaku Baruch. Hashem will bless all of us to do true tshuva in a way of simcha, menucha, and it should be the ultimate tshuva of the Gula Amitis Ashlema. Techa from Miyad Mamish. The name of Rabbeinu Melech Moshiach Now.